Welcome to the final episode of our From Burnout to Breakthrough series here on The Wilderness and the Well. I'm Cece Henderson, your host, and today I'm sharing the final part of my story. If you've been journeying with me through this series, you know we've been talking about burnout, the wilderness of exhaustion, disillusionment, and weariness. We started with the breaking point, then walked through the healing process, and today we step into renewal. Because the wilderness is never the end of the story. There is a well waiting for you, a place of refreshing, restoration, and a renewed sense of calling. Maybe you're in a season where you're coming out of burnout, but you don't know what's next. Maybe you're wondering if you'll ever feel passionate, purposeful, or whole again. That's exactly what we're talking about today. How God renews us, gives us fresh vision, and teaches us to walk in His purpose without burning out again. When I finally started to heal, I thought my life would just go back to normal. But something had shifted. The way I thought about work, success, and even my relationship with God, it all changed. I used to believe that if I wasn't constantly doing, I wasn't valuable. But God was showing me that my worth wasn't in my work, it was in Him. One of the biggest shifts was learning to work from rest, not for rest. Before, I would push myself to exhaustion and then collapse, hoping a weekend off would fix me. But real rest isn't something we earn, it's something we live in. We need to live or abide in Him. Jesus says in John 15 verses 4-5, "Remain in me and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine." This scripture gives us a picture that to be fruitful, we need to remain connected to Him. That by simply taking the step to prioritize being in His presence, connected to Him, fruitfulness becomes an automatic byproduct. You see, I'd been trying to bear fruit by striving, but real fruit comes from abiding, and that changed everything for me. It shifted my focus from being busy doing to focusing on being busy being like Christ, being in His presence, being with Him. After walking through burnout and learning to rest, I started to sense that the shift I was experiencing was much bigger. But I had no idea what it meant. I just knew that I felt different. I couldn't fit back into the molds that I was in before. I also noticed some signs, some shifts. In the Sanctuary International, the numbers of women attending started to decline, and the events didn't seem to be attended in the same way. We'd been home educating my daughter, and it was now becoming apparent that she was going to need something different, another season that seemed to be coming to a close. And remember that time I had to have off work? Well, that really had compounded that it was now time for me to seriously consider leaving the type of work that I'd been doing for almost the last 10 years of my life. Then I felt led to change my church family. I'd been with this church for over 20 years, and now God was saying it was time for us to worship somewhere else. And then there were the abrupt departures of friends. People just seemed to be walking out of my life. In this season, I found myself speaking at events and speaking at brunches with this one particular scripture resonating, Isaiah 43 verse 19. "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" I announced that the theme for the year for the sanctuary was new method, same mandate. This idea that God was calling us to do something different. Maybe you felt that too, like God is gently nudging you towards a new season. But fear and uncertainty can make it hard to take the first step. The wilderness often feels like a season of loss. And boy, did I experience some losses. As I said earlier, friends just suddenly started to walk out of my life. And I couldn't understand why. And in that season, I even lost my dad. And whilst wilderness seasons often, yes, do include loss, I've come to realize that it's also a season of clarity. That when everything gets stripped away, we can finally be still enough to hear God's voice again. And it's in that stillness that He began revealing something new. For me, that included making a bold move, literally. After my wilderness season, I moved to a new country, stepping into an unfamiliar place with nothing but faith that God was leading me. And I can tell you now, He absolutely was. But that transition was terrifying and exciting all at once. But it reminded me that healing isn't just about recovering from what was. It's about stepping into what's next. And sometimes God calls us to step into the unknown so He can do something new in us. Maybe you're listening right now and you feel like everything is unraveling. But what if instead of falling apart, your life is being reassembled in a new way that better aligns with God's plans? Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." I love this scripture. But as everything got stripped away, and as I was challenged to step into something new, I found it a little bit hard to walk with it. Did I really trust Him? Did I really trust that His plans were for good? Did I trust His planning skills? Now that may sound ridiculous to you, but when we get to those spaces where we feel fearful, when we get to those spaces where we suddenly realize we have to let go and let God, when we really unpick our feelings, we often discover that the root of it is the question, do I trust Him? You see, God is never done with us. He is always preparing us for something greater. Making the decision to move wasn't easy. I wrestled with doubts, fears, and the weight of all the what ifs. But deep down, I knew that in order to step into my next season, I had to leave behind the things that were holding me back. Whether that was a place, a mindset, or old expectations. I had to be intentional. Now, I'm not suggesting that as you walk out of your burnout, that you have to move country. But I am suggesting that you will need to be intentional. That you will need to be willing to let go and leave behind what doesn't serve you anymore. That you may have to walk away from your comfortable discomfort. Yep, that's right. Comfortable discomfort. Those things that you know don't really fit, that are now uncomfortable, but you don't want to walk away because you're used to it. Stepping into that new season was rough. I was having to walk away from the anchor points that I'd been holding on to for years. I was having to unlearn ways of doing things that I had been doing my whole life. But as I stepped into this new season, God didn't just leave me to figure it out on my own. Yep, you guessed it. He provided wells, sources of refreshment, provision, and direction along the way. The first well was the well of the actual move, the well of relocation and fresh perspective. Sometimes a change in location brings a change in mindset. It shakes up things enough for you to see life through a different lens. It also can allow for new growth. In fact, this move became part of my healing. It forced me to fully depend on God instead of my comfort zone. It gave me a fresh perspective, a chance to reset my rhythms and habits and priorities. It was the final step in my burnout recovery, teaching me to embrace God's plan over my own expectations. The second well was the well of renewed calling. I began to see how the pain of this recent season had a purpose and how my story could help others. Having watched the decline and the winding down of the Sanctuary International as so it felt, with him leading me to take a break and not telling me when I was going to come back, in that space he renewed the call. He brought into clarity that phrase, new method, same mandate. And so the Sanctuary International has experienced a refresh, starting with this very podcast. It was a reminder that God is not over with my story yet. God is not over with your story yet. There is still a need for you. And he's going to use all that you have experienced for his glory. The third well was the well of sustainable rhythms. I had the chance to build a lifestyle that prioritized balance, spiritual connection, and true rest. You see, God was leading me to somewhere better than I could have imagined. And I believe he's doing the same for you too. So before I go and end this series, I want to get really practical. Because even after healing, I had to learn a whole new way of living to make sure I didn't fall back into burnout. So here are 3 key lessons that changed everything for me. Number 1, setting healthy boundaries. Before, I said yes to everything. When someone would pick up the phone and call me and ask me to do something, it activated that people pleaser, and I found myself saying yes without thinking about my commitments, without thinking about my capacity, without even thinking about whether God wanted me to do it. And so a friend of mine, my sister in fact, gave me a little hint. Now when people ask me to do something, I tell them that I will get back to them. And I do. But the main aim is to give me time to reflect on what is being asked of me. To give me space to ask God, is this mine to carry? I learned that rest is a boundary. That it's actually a discipline and not a luxury. And so as part of setting my healthy boundaries, I've had to be intentional about rest. Recently, I established a relaxation corner in my home, a space dedicated to rest and stillness. It has an armchair, a table for a drink and some snacks, and a bookcase filled with novels to read for pleasure. It's the same spot I use for my quiet times and my coffees with Jesus. You see, if Jesus himself took time away to pray and rest, why do we think that we don't need it? So the first practical lesson, set your healthy boundaries. The second lesson, prioritizing time with God over busyness. Remember those moments of retreating in the middle of the day? I started to build my schedule around him, finding space to drop quality time in with him. Time with God is no longer a checkbox, but it's where my strength comes from. For that to be possible, I had to shift my mindset about that devotion time. It had become a burden. It would become something that I would beat myself up with if I felt that my quality time was not quality enough. Perhaps I felt I hadn't prayed enough. Perhaps I hadn't read enough of the Bible. Did it still count if I just sat and was still in his presence and listened to worship? Easing off the pressure of my devotion time having to look a certain way has helped me to appreciate that even 5 minutes of stillness with him can reset my whole day. And so now my prioritizing of my time with God over busyness has become a daily ritual. My third lesson: leading from peace, not pressure. I was used to leading from a place of exhaustion. Now I seek to lead from overflow. Now this is a step that can be quite a challenge when you've had the habit of always ignoring that feeling of tiredness and pushing through. But now I'm seeking to really listen to my body. Listen to what it's telling me physically, as well as also listening to the emotions that I feel, so that I am no longer scraping from the bottom of the barrel, but seeking to pour out into the lives of others from the overflow. Peace is a choice, and I have to protect it. We have to make decisions to protect our peace. Sometimes those decisions may not be appreciated by others, but I've found that as I've got deeper into my intimacy with God, I've begun to be able to be at peace with being in right standing with him, even if it means that I'm not in right standing with others. And now, if I feel frantic, overwhelmed, or pressured, I don't ignore it. I don't shut it down. I don't berate myself. I take it that it's a sign that I need to pause and realign with God. These shifts have changed my life, and I know that they can change yours too. I want to leave you with this thought. God isn't just restoring you, he's preparing you for something greater. As I close this series today, my prayer for you is that you won't just recover from burnout, but that you will walk into something greater. So let me ask you, is there a shift God is calling you to make? It might not be a physical move, but maybe it's a mindset shift, a career change, or a spiritual renewal. Whatever it is, trust that when God calls you into something new, he also provides what you need to step into it. If this series has encouraged you, I'd love to hear your story. Send me a message or leave a review. It means so much to connect with you. Stay tuned for what's next on The Wilderness and the Well. We have more incredible conversations coming your way. Until then, remember, God provides wells in the wilderness. Let's find them together.